Now, time is 14 minutes past 11. Let's take a look at the headlines. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Danny Alexander, has revealed that an extra 200,000 people will be targeted by a team of tax inspectors set up to scrutinise the wealthiest in society. Church services are being held in Greater Manchester to remember the 2 officers murdered in a gun and grenade attack. And tighter rules on gas and electricity companies mean that they will have to compensate customers directly if they get their bills wrong. Well, let's return to the business of tax collection, and the Liberal Democrats talking about having 2,000 more tax inspectors, or a special force of tax inspectors targeting up to 200,000 people to make sure that they are paying the right rate. Adrian Huston is a former tax inspector with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, now a director of the accountancy firm Huston and Co. He is in our Belfast studio. Thank you for talking to us this morning. Well, what's your thought? Are there a lot of sort of spare tax inspectors around, if I could put it like that, who could be put to work on this special investigation?
Yeah, far from it. My experience is that there's actually relatively little tax investigation work being done these days. HMRC has gone through a lot of staff cuts, a lot of redundancies. My view is that morale is very low, and I don't think there are many bodies around for undertaking this sort of work. And to be quite honest, we've heard it all before. I don't think we're going to see too many millions of pounds being found under the carpet by this initiative.
When you were a tax inspector, did you sort of think to yourself, oh, lots of people are dodging, or do you think the vast majority of people have got no choice in the way they pay tax, they pay it through PAYE? But those who do have a choice, do you think there is a lot of avoidance or even evasion going on?
Yeah, well, there's an important distinction between avoidance, which is legal, and evasion, which is illegal. But from my time as a tax inspector, I would have to say that there's a general perception in the revenue that most people are fiddling their taxes, and it's just that some of them haven't been caught yet. Now, HMRC would deny that, but among those involved in investigations, there is a widespread belief that that's the case. And I think, again, the Lib Dems here are showing that there's a belief that we can avoid all these nasty austerity cuts if we can just bring in that tax which is being evaded by people. And unfortunately, it's just not as simple as a few sound bites.
You've dealt, I think, with what they call high net worth individuals, in other words, very rich people. One always gets the impression, or people who are not very rich, that those are exactly the sort of people who can legally, actually, in most cases, get away with not paying too much in tax. And that's infuriating for the people who are just a bit below that level.
Absolutely, yes, and there's no doubt that the wealthier in society do have access to legal and accountancy and tax advice that helps them to avoid tax legally. But that's the important distinction. What Danny Alexander's wanting to do is find people who've got assets and property of over £1 million and shake that tree to see if they can find something wrong in their tax affairs. And that's a much harder thing than identifying the people who happen to have some wealth because granny has died and left them their house in the south of England. It's a much bigger job to try and prove that these people have acquired their wealth illegally. And
so going back to what you talked about at the very beginning, sound as though you need a lot of people to do it. On the other hand, presumably computer systems do help these days, don't they?
They should do. HMRC would say they're using much more of them, but the government is much less joined up than we would believe. We would think if an arm of government has your details on a computer, that HMRC would be able to access that and join the dots and find out who they should be targeting. But actually there's much less of that than you would have expected. And Danny Alexander seems to be saying that there's going to be much more joined up government in terms of the technology identifying who needs to pay more tax.
Mr. Huston, you seem to me to be an example of what we hear about a lot, which is tax inspectors who do a very, very good job, but they're very tempted to go off and earn a lot more money in the private sector as soon as they understand how the system works. That's another problem, isn't it, for the revenue authorities?
To some extent, it's a problem that the revenue spends a lot of money training people like myself to a very high level. And then they don't make enough efforts to retain those staff because they can be tempted away by highly paid jobs elsewhere, or in my case, just the temptation to set up on my own. But yes, it's a very useful skill to provide clients, and HMRC doesn't seem to mind that people will leave and seek other opportunities elsewhere and use that expensive knowledge against HMRC.
It's poachers and gamekeepers again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But Mr. Huston, we're very grateful to you for joining us. Thank you very much.